Hello and happy Sunday. Welcome to Sundays at the Chateau. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Stephanie, the Chatelaine of this 16th century chateau in the heart of France. As you can see, I'm in a slightly different outfit today, and that's because today I want to take you on a walk outside and tell you the story of the missing lake of the chateau. It was so stunningly beautiful in the past, you cannot imagine. When we moved in, Lalande was standing by a 5-acre lake that had probably been reflecting its beauty for about 1,000 years. There's been a chateau on this site for at least 1,000 years, though the one that I live in today dates from the 16th century. But the lake and the moats are much older and are vestiges of the medieval castle. The moats were a very important defensive feature in medieval times that would have prevented defenders from attacking the chateau with any ease, and the lake was also important as a food source because the lakes in this region were all man-made and they were created specifically for fishing. The boathouse rose out of the water. We used to take the boat out for picnics at lunchtime and also have boat races against each other. But as you can see from this aerial view, our lake is no longer a lake, it is now a wetland. Just a few years after I'd moved in, the French water police came to visit me and delivered some shocking news. I had to drain the lake or risk a massive fine and over €100,000 worth of work because of new EU regulations preventing man-made barrages on tributaries of primary fishing class rivers. Draining the lake is actually very easy. You just lift the sluice gate and the water drains away very fast. And they scared me and kept telling me that it was my responsibility to do this or I would be in terrible trouble. And like a moron, I believed them and did what they told me to do. I later discovered that because our lake is on the Plan Cassini, which is an ancient French map, and therefore shows how old it is, I am allowed to keep it. And if I'd completely ignored them and refused to drain the lake, they would have had to give me a 50% grant to do the works to bring it in line with the new EU regulations. But because they tricked me into emptying it by scaring me when I was alone at the chateau and had absolutely no money, they now do not have to give me the grant. And the reason I haven't made this video before now is that honestly I find it too upsetting, and I've been a bit of an ostrich. I'm just pretending it's not happening, not facing up to it. But that's going to change now, and it's going to change largely because of the support that I've had from all of you on my Patreon account. I can't believe this as I'm saying it, but I only set it up last Sunday in last Sunday's video, and I thought maybe 1 or 2 people who'd asked me about it would sign up. But I have nearly 100 patrons, and so now I can see a time when we can fix things like the problem with the lake. So I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about things, which means that I have the strength to make this video that I did not have the strength to make before, and that's because of all of you. So let's wrap up warm and go outside to solve the mystery of the missing lake. In some of these shots you might be able to hear a droning in the background, and that's because Ian has really kindly offered to take some drone shots so that you get a better idea of how the lake fits in with the chateau and the moats. We're just arriving at the old boathouse now. The poor thing is just marooned in a dry lake. There's our poor marooned boat. The water came up to this path, and there's the old boathouse. And I don't think we'll ever be able to get the boathouse back. It seems that even if we can get the lake back, it would have to be 10 meters from the path at least, which means that there's no way that this boathouse could be sitting in it. But I do want to save the structure and use it in future, and we're thinking of making it into a proper floor here, and then maybe hanging chandeliers and using it for dinner parties in the evenings, or making a lounge so that we can sit here and look out in summer. And if we're very quiet, I'm sure that we would see deer and maybe even wild boar, because they're certainly here in the woods. It's such a great structure. I definitely want to save it and find really good uses for it. The view from here is beautiful, even now, of just the wetland. And you can see how old our lake was just by glancing at the stone walls of its structure. It has incredibly ancient walls. This is the path down through the woods towards the stream of Lalande, the source of all of the joys of the lake and all of its problems, because it's a tributary of the Vouvre, and our village is called Crozon-sur-Vouvre. And the Vouvre has been classed a primary class fishing river, and therefore no tributaries of it can have a man-made barrage, or so they said. This is the old wooden bridge that Andreas repaired when he was staying here, using old planks of oak that we had. And he also made these great sculptures. Oops, another tree is down. The stream arrives from the west and goes under our bridge. And from here it goes down through the dry lake bed, forming a wetland, and then out underneath the road into the woodland stream on the other side. This little bridge is my favourite spot in the woods at Lalande. I love the fact that the stream meanders through ancient stone walls that predate the chateau, and I could listen to the water all day long. And from this spot, I'm going to take you on a walk through the woods to show you just how magical the land is here. There is something indescribably ancient and healing about it, and it is worth saving. The woods at Lalande feel like fairyland in every season. I think possibly the most magical is when it snows, which it hasn't done this winter, and it's silent out here and white. It's like Narnia. But my favourite time of year by far is the spring, when a carpet of bluebells comes out, and one of our woods in particular becomes fairyland. It's the most beautiful sight I've ever seen, and I hope it happens again this year because I'll take lots of video. The daffodils just starting to come out in the woods. This is where the lake used to end, at this line of trees, but as you can see it's completely dry up to here now. We're standing on what was the bank of the lake, and you can see just how big it was because from here we can't even see the chateau. I'm walking along the path which goes all the way around what used to be the edge of the lake. It's the most beautiful walk. I love the fact that the woods are filled with boulders that are covered with moss. Lalande is sitting on granite bedrock, and there are a lot of quarries around here, and you can see that just from the size of the boulders used in this wall. The woods are filled with oak, beech, birch and holly. There's some holly right here, and more evergreens as you get closer to the chateau itself. And on any walks through our woods, you'll see lots of piles of wood which are waiting to be taken into the chateau hangar to be stored for use in the winter. The highest quality oak from French woods is used to make the barrels for wine, and some of our oaks have ended up as wine barrels, which is a nice thought. I feel they really live on well after their death. I love the sound of the crunching leaves underfoot. And finally here you can see Lalande and the old boathouse through the trees. Everything that you can see behind me was part of our 5-acre lake. And now we've reached the road that snakes through Lalande's property. The road is the edge of the lake, and it used to overflow under the road, which is still the path that the stream takes today. It then carries on through our woods on the other side. And here you can just about see through the bare winter trees our smaller lake. And our small lake marks the edge of our property because the buildings that you can see beyond are our neighbour's farm, though it was originally a part of the chateau for 1,000 years, but was sold separately when we bought back in 2005. Although this lake is much smaller than our 5-acre one, it does give you an idea of how glorious ours looked at the foot of Lalande. Throughout our woods there are these ancient stone walls covered with moss, and I think they show the true age of the chateau. We know that people were living here in the 1200s, and I'm sure that some of these paths are vestiges of those days. And it's so quiet and peaceful where we live. The only sounds are the birds and the running water. Coming out here and seeing the loss of the lake still upsets my mother. She doesn't like to come and see it at all. But actually, I'm filled with hope that we'll be able to do something in the future, because without optimism, we don't achieve anything in life. What a beautiful day. Look at that sunlight dappled through the trees. I love this field because there's a beautiful wood behind it, and you might be able to hear it, but you can't quite see it. Just at the base of those trees is the prettiest stream surrounded by granite rocks. And then, very excitingly, our ruined mill. It would originally have had a wheel that could have been turned when water was let out of our lake. You can still see that the stream snakes its way through this wetland. And if we shut the sluices, the lake would be full again within 2 days. It's very fast. And now, of course, we have a forest growing in it. This is the area of the lower field where the lake was emptied into, and you can still see the gate that was for stopping the fish as the water went out, so that that area could be used for fishing everything that was in the lake when it was drained every 2 years for a huge fish, especially of carp. And then there's a little cut ditch that carries on to join the stream. And here you can see the path that the water would have taken in the past when it was powering this water mill. This mill would have been used to mill flour because the chateau has its own bread oven, had its own fields, and would certainly have been producing its own flour and bread. Can you imagine the views that that water mill would have if we rebuilt it? I think it's still one of the most beautiful places on earth. And this is the path that the water takes, snaking through the wetland and then over to the overflow where we have a waterfall which sounds gorgeous. This is our overflow, and if we close it, the lake comes back almost instantly. It is so tempting, but I'm controlling myself. Let's do this properly. And it passes under the road and comes out on the other side. And from here it goes into the most beautiful stream bounded by granite boulders, which meanders through our woods. Now, we don't usually have red and white barriers through the road, but we have a very large problem with, I think probably because the lake was drained, everything is drying out, all of the walls, and they're starting to crack, and therefore the road is in danger here. Luckily, the commune was given the road in the 1960s by the previous owners, and so they very kindly have said that this is going to be at their cost, but this is huge works. The road cuts through our land, but for the entire time that I've been out here filming, I haven't seen a single car. And it's usually like that. It's incredibly peaceful. And from the woods on this side of the property, you have a much better view of the water coming under the road. It's hard to describe the beauty of our walk through the woods. There is no more relaxing place on earth. Rocks are unrecognisable as rocks anymore. They're all being used as the base for wonderful things. Look at that green moss and the new shoots. I wonder if this is the start of our bluebells coming up. And there's still the remnants of all the chestnuts from the autumn, with the new growth of spring pushing through. Here's another wall that's become an entire ecosystem. If you look down here, you'll see that even the path is a bed of moss. There's all sorts of strange and wonderful things growing everywhere. Things seem to grow out of the very rock that holds this land and this chateau together. I actually feel like just lying here and staring up at the treetops, but I'm going to carry on with the walk and show you the moat. Now I'm heading out of the woods and back towards Lalande, past the old fishery and towards our moats. And this is the chateau's old fishery. Again, there's the granite walls. A boat would have been docked here, and this entire area was used for restocking the lake once it had been drained for the fishing. So every 2 years the lake was drained, the fish were sold by the side of the road, and some were kept, put in here and allowed to breed, and then put back into the lake when the water came back. Just about through the trees in the background you can make out the 16th century wing of Lalande. In the dry part you can still see the old stone walls of the fishery, and I think this would be very easy to put back. Here it's just a case of some nautiragondins, which are South American beavers, who've been making holes in our walls, letting the water out. The moats are what remains of the medieval castle that would have stood on this site. Now there's only a stream at the base of what was once the east moat at Lalande, and it was absolutely huge. There's a forest growing in it now. This is our southern field, and at the base of it there's a tiny stream, and incredibly it's this stream that feeds the moats of Lalande. It passes under the road and trickles into the moat that is at the front of the chateau. This side of the moat is all that remains of Lalande's once mighty defences. You can see that the 16th century part of the chateau was built for protection, whereas the 19th century part was built for pleasure. pleasure and protection. I feel safe and happy here, and I am determined to restore this chateau until it's more glorious than ever before. I hope you enjoyed this walk with me through the property at Lalande, through our woods, and to see our dry lake. I am definitely not going to give up hope. And because of your overwhelming support, we now have nearly €1,000 coming in from patrons to Lalande every month, which is unbelievable. And I now see I'm not only going to be able to put money aside for the panelling in the Grand Salon, I'm also going to be able to commission the survey, which is our first step in getting this lake back. This summer, I am going to ask for the survey, and I'm going to begin this fight to turn back this act of vandalism and restore the lake to Lalande. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to this channel. There will be lots more things about chateaus in future, and you can't imagine what a difference it makes to our ability to renovate this 16th century chateau. And if you'd like to become one of the patrons of Lalande, then please go to patreon.com/the Chateau Diaries. I am so grateful to all of you who've already done that. You're making a very, very real difference here. Thank you. And now I'm home, and it's time for a warming cup of tea. But just before I have my cup of tea, I would like to give a personal thank you to our Marquis and Marquise of Lalande, Brian Woodward and Caroline Forster, who are each pledging $100 a month. And to all of our counts and countesses of Lalande, whose names you can see here.